This video explores the concept of natural induction, a study by Buckley and colleagues published in Entropy 2024, volume 26, page 765. Due to the complexity of the subject and the need for precise description, I am largely quoting directly from the published paper. I encourage viewers to seek out the paper in Entropy and read along. They investigate systems that can optimize and learn physically. These systems adapt by changing their state and structure under stress, with these changes influencing each other. Adaptation by natural induction results from positive feedback between optimization and learning. Adaptation by natural induction occurs naturally in physical systems described by a network of viscoelastic connections, subject to disturbances. This involves dynamical feedback, energy minimization on state variables given problem parameters, and energy minimization on those parameters given the states visited. The initial shape of the problem landscape causes changes in state, which is optimization. This state at any point in time provides a data point that causes relatively slow changes in the problem parameters, which is learning. This provides a modified set of problem parameters to optimize, and so on. Disturbances, randomizing the state variables, occur infrequently enough that the system spends most of its time at energy minima or locally optimal solutions, and frequently enough that the deformation of the parameters occurs over a distribution of such optima. Buckley and co-workers show that a dynamical system described by a network of viscoelastic connections can spontaneously learn to solve an optimization problem better with experience under natural conditions. The conditions for this effect are that the connections are viscoelastic, meaning that they give way slightly under stress, and that the state configuration of the system is occasionally disturbed, for example, subjected to shocks or perturbations. For example, a network of masses connected by springs and subject to disturbances meets these conditions if the springs are not perfectly elastic, that is, if the springs are slightly plastic, as all physical springs are. The specific self-conditioned organization of the springs that obtains constitutes an adaptive organization, insomuch as it causes the system to generate state configurations that are particularly high-quality solutions to difficult combinatorial optimization problems. The quality of the solutions discovered can be extremely rare compared to those found by local gradient methods in the same problem, even if such first-order optimization has repeated attempts. Buckley and co-workers call the spontaneous feedback between learning and optimization, occurring without selection or design, natural induction, and the ability to improve optimization ability with experience, that is, finding solutions better than local optima, adaptation by natural induction to reflect its close association with inductive learning processes, and to emphasize its complementarity with natural selection. There is some possibility that abduction or transduction are more accurate terms, but Buckley and co-workers feel that induction captures the basic flavor sufficiently. Just as Darwin's natural selection is a process that requires no literal intelligent oversight, but mirrors the intentional selection of the breeder, so Buckley and co-workers' natural induction requires no literal intelligent oversight, but nonetheless mirrors the way in which an intelligent agent can inductively model the behavior of a system to discover solutions that resolve its constraints. The underlying algorithmic concept is as follows. In each trajectory of an optimization process, the state changes until it reaches a local equilibrium, corresponding to a locally optimal solution. This optimizing process is subject to repeated shocks or perturbations, which effectively randomize the state variables, but not the interaction variables. Each local equilibrium state achieved in between these disturbances is thus a point drawn from a distribution of such locally optimal solutions. Meanwhile, the problem parameters give way slightly in a manner that accommodates to the current state. As the system spends time at each locally optimal solution visited, the problem parameters model this distribution of state configurations. That is, the problem parameters are model parameters, and the distribution of locally optimal solutions is the training data. The result is that the system models the outcomes of its own behavior, hence a self-modeling dynamical system. In so doing, this changes the dynamics of the optimizing system, making it more likely to visit solutions that have already been visited. This changes the distribution of equilibria discovered, which changes the model or problem again, and so on. This affects dynamical feedback between learning and optimization. The state variables give way in a manner that accommodates the current system parameters, and meanwhile the system parameters give way in a manner that accommodates the current state variables. This results in an increased optimization ability, particularly in the ability to discover solutions of exceptionally rare quality. In principle, natural induction may occur in any dynamical system where internal structures give way or reorganize slightly under the stress or forcing a system experiences. The worked example illustrated in this paper uses a network of viscoelastic connections, like springs, that can stand in for many types of network connections in different biological and non-biological substrates. The extent to which this results in effective adaptation and optimization better than a local hill climber will depend on the suitability of the inductive bias implicit in the system architecture. That is, whether the causal geometry of the system doing the learning is like that of the environment it is learning about. In other settings, the underlying learning to optimize principles involved in this effect have been demonstrated in other kinds of self-modeling dynamical systems, including neural networks, gene regulation networks, social networks, and ecological networks. In all previous cases, however, there was, at some level or another, either a mandated learning process, a selection process, or a utility maximization process. Uniquely, in this paper, Buckley and co-workers show that the same adaptive principle is exhibited naturally and spontaneously in a physical system, and it is therefore an adaptive process independent of natural selection. Crucially, there is no differential survival or reproduction involved either for the network as a whole, its component parts, or the connections between them. That is, Buckley and co-workers demonstrate that natural induction occurs without natural selection. Natural selection is neither involved at runtime, as the adaptation occurs, nor in establishing the initial conditions, the setup, or the construction of the system. In the following experiments, Buckley and co-workers detail some example dynamical systems in two scenarios, each described by a system of masses connected by springs. The first scenario is generic, a network of viscoelastic connections. This illustrates a system that gets better at minimizing its own energy function by changing the organization of its interactions. The second scenario describes a system that finds good solutions to an independent system of problem parameters or an external environment via changes to its organization. This is achieved by altering the coupled dynamics of the system and the environment. This is illustrated for both continuous problem variables and binary problem variables. Buckley and co-workers present experiments where the mechanism of adaptation by natural induction is the same. Buckley and co-workers present numerical simulations of these systems to illustrate their optimization capabilities and demonstrate that they constitute adaptation by Buckley and co-workers' stringent problem-solving criterion. To conclude, Buckley and co-workers discuss how natural induction differs from natural selection and point to some of the important implications. But Buckley and co-workers' purpose in using a physical model built from masses and springs is not because Buckley and co-workers are interested in a mechanism depending on these specific physical components, but as an illustration of a general dynamical property in networks of various kinds, both biological and non-biological. The purpose of describing this as a system in this physical way is to be as generic as possible, and to ensure Buckley and co-workers are not using assumptions that derive from biological systems with properties that depend on prior natural selection. Darwin's description of evolution by natural selection, though embedded in detailed biological observations, was also what we might now describe as an algorithm, independent of this biological substrate or any particular instantiation. In the same way, Buckley and co-workers aim to use the models that follow as an illustration of an adaptive algorithm that may be instantiated in multiple different substrates, specifically dynamical systems described by networks of viscoelastic connections, including biological networks of many kinds. The relevant conceptual territory of this paper thus lies at the interface of biological thinking, physical systems, and general dynamical systems. Like the other work in this area, Buckley and co-workers aim to make a small contribution to triangulating the space of possibilities for spontaneous adaptation in natural systems. The aim of this paper is not to displace existing theories, but to illustrate additional possibilities and potentialities. This places the work naturally at the cusp of physics and biology and contributes to understanding their interaction. It is now understood that evolution depends on the interaction of natural selection with the self-organization properties of non-living matter. Natural induction adds to this the possibility that dynamical feedbacks among unorganized components are capable of non-trivial adaptation absent natural selection. This concept space, in particular the use of energy landscapes and attractors in biological processes, has long been a part of evolutionary thinking. Unlike much of this prior work, Buckley and co-workers also use the theoretical framing of computer science and optimization to provide a rigorous test for non-trivial adaptation, or second-order optimization. This helps to distinguish mechanisms that provide adaptation from other types of complex systems phenomena. Whereas other authors have sought to understand how natural selection might be implemented in primitive physical systems, Buckley and co-workers aim to demonstrate that primitive physical systems correspond to different principles of adaptation familiar to machine learning, in particular adaptation that is not natural selection nor a weakened form of natural selection. As we conclude, remember the paper by Buckley and co-workers. Reflect on the profound implications of non-Darwinian modes of selection like natural induction. Consider how we might explore these processes to bridge the physical and biological worlds.